Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We bring you stories of faith, love, and devotion. Yeah, just kidding, please help us grow by hitting that like button. Now on to the story. Old story of being cheated on by first wife to hopefully help others. Advice. This is my first post, so please bear with me. So this story happened a long while ago, but it is still a fairly long story, so I apologize in advance. I am sharing my story so those who are going through something similar will be able to see the red flags that I missed/dismissed and maybe save themselves some heartache. My ex-wife, who I will call Ash, and I met in college when I was helping out backstage for a jazz choir competition her group was running. Throughout the competition, 3 days, we kept interacting and complimenting each other in passing, and by the end I worked up the courage to ask her out. I was playing in the college band as a stress relief from my other classes, and my band went on the same tour as Ash's choir, so we ended up going to Hawaii for almost a week to start out our relationship. We clicked very well and I fell in love with her and her family, and they accepted me almost immediately. In 2003 we married while finishing up community college and moved into an apartment, and everything went great for a few years. After we graduated from community college, I got accepted into a civil engineering school as well as started working as a civil engineer intern for a city near my college, and we decided it was time to start our family. When Ash found out she was pregnant, we were ecstatic, until they performed the first ultrasound to find out there was no amniotic fluid, which led us to finding out there were multiple complications with the pregnancy. We decided against terminating the pregnancy and just prayed for a miracle, which didn't happen. After our child was born, Ash was so tired from the meds they gave her, not an epidural since it happened too fast, that she fell asleep after 10 minutes, and I held our son at that point for an hour until he passed away in my arms. A few months later I tried to get Ash to go to counseling, but she refused to talk about our baby with me at all. At one point Ash was hanging out with a friend who came to visit, and I had a horrible feeling, so I rushed home instead of going to do laundry at my parents' house as I was originally planning after school. When I came upstairs to our apartment, I walked into Ash and AP1 giving each other hand jobs. I felt my world crash around me, and I walked out upset with Ash begging me to stop and how it was an accident. Things got out of control and it didn't mean anything. All the typical things you hear in here. Well, I was in love and wanted to try and work it out, though I was broken at the same time. We went and talked with Ash's parents to let them know what happened and ask them for moral support in fixing our relationship, since she still didn't want to talk with a therapist at this time. With a lot of work on both our parts, we started rebuilding the relationship, and several months later I felt I could trust her again. Our relationship was strained as the loss of our son pulled us in different directions, and I felt like pulling closer and wanting to be with my wife more, but she pulled apart and wanted more space. After a year I felt something off in our relationship again, and this time I went to Ash's father and told him I felt something was off, and upon his suggestion I downloaded some keystrokes spyware that recorded all the keystrokes and took screenshots every 5 minutes when in use on her PC. After a few days of reviewing the recorded material, I found that she was cheating again, this time with AP2. She was hooking up to make out when she went out with her co-workers after work, and I felt my world break around me for the second time. I worked, went to school, then came home and cooked for her and even did the dishes before sitting down to play games together, and she never let on that anything was going on. When I asked about our relationship, she would say everything is good. She would send me photos or videos each once in a while, but at this point I started pulling away and tried to get her to admit to her affair. After several weeks of this I finally confronted her, and she switched like a light from being loving to not caring about me. Once everything was out in the open, it felt like she didn't have to pretend anymore. She still wanted to work things out, and she hadn't had sex with either guy, so after some pleading and requests from her family I decided to try to work it out. I didn't trust Ash at this point and kept tabs on what she was doing, and it wasn't long before she started trying to cheat again. At this point she was trying to hook up with AP3, and I confronted her and kicked her out. I asked her what she felt was appropriate with the opposite sex and she said more than kissing. While separated she moved in with AP4 and I moved back with my parents for emotional support once the contract on the apartment was up. It took me many years before I was able to date again, and also I had to retake many of my classes in college because of not being able to concentrate due to everything that was done. I figured she didn't care about the relationship so I would wait for her to file the divorce paperwork, but she ended up asking me to do the paperwork so she could get married to AP4 a little over a year later. I was more than happy to get rid of the relationship and it was an uncontested divorce which helped speed up the process and we both just took what we brought into the relationship. It takes two to work on a relationship and if you are doing all the work, it will inevitably fail. If your partner is unwilling to put in the work to fix the relationship before confronting, it is probably not worth trying to spend your time and energy afterwards so they can feel better. Each time I confronted my ex she showed less regret and felt I already knew and so there was less of a reason to care. I have now been married to my current wife for 10 years this December and have 3 beautiful children with 1 more on the way. It took a long time to work through the pain my ex caused me, but know that no matter how horrible things look in the moment, you can work through it and build yourself a better life. Use family, friends and therapists as needed to work through the emotions and know there is a light at the end of the dark tunnel if you persist. And then people bash chump lady and rather praise pro-adultery champion cheater apologist Esther Perel. Thank you so much for sharing. Looking back, are there any red flags in her personality earlier on in the relationship that could have hinted at something like this? Treating you like this requires lack of good morals, emotional immaturity like not being able to express her concerns about the relationship, or even overreacting, and simply lack of empathy. Anything rings a bell? She actually had great morals when we first married, that changed after our son died. She could not remember holding him and that left a void in her heart that she tried to fill with other activities. Also she was 20 when we got married and had lived at home her whole life, whereas I had traveled the world and knew how to live alone. I think she wanted to sow her oats since she hadn't prior to us getting married, but when she was caught it ruined it. I would strongly recommend that if someone is dating anyone who has never lived on their own, they have them move out for a year and live in apartments with friends or something prior to taking the relationship towards marriage. The flags happened after our son died and then she started hiding her phone, hiding her texts online, talking more and more to people in games, etc. I think that losing a child is one of those things that make women very cold to the man that they had the child with. But it's internalized so much they pretend everything is okay, believe everything is okay, and then they start to break and don't feel much of anything while still putting on a front of emotion. My wife also changed after multiple miscarriages and having a DNC, or whatever it's called when it's a late-term miscarriage removal procedure. I had similar experiences and have been bashed by many Redditors for looking into things when I already knew something was wrong. That feeling you got with AP1, I also got that feeling and ignored it too long. I think everyone needs to trust their gut instinct, especially when it is screaming something is wrong. I'm sorry for the pain you went through, thank you so much for sharing. It's often here that we only receive the initial incident, maybe a little follow-up, but it's really nice to hear from the other side after time passes and how much better life can get. What would you have done differently knowing what you know now? When my wife begged for me to stay, I should have required her to go to a therapist as a requirement for me to stay. I feel that the void from losing our son was one of the big reasons she pushed in the direction she did. And when she didn't work on the relationship as much but still pulled away, I should have left instead of staying around in pain. Could have saved myself a few years of emotional pain to heal from. No therapy to reconcile. Trying to do this by the seat of your pants is simply rug sweeping, and it usually fails. As it did with her, repeatedly. Remorse is necessary on the part of the cheater, and it isn't saying they are sorry, not just feeling guilty, regretful and ashamed. Remorse is https://www.bonobology.com/signs regrets cheating/ balking at any necessary points, is a sure sign of false remorse/reconciling. Reluctance is not balking. Reluctance is normal with some points, but again, many points are non-negotiable. Insufficient remorse means no reconciling. Nothing can cure this. Very true, though time dulls old wounds. How is the ex doing? She is married to a P4 and has several kids. We were amicable, but I didn't make any effort to keep in touch for obvious reasons. Any karma for your ex? Op didn't do anything to punish X, nor did he do anything to appease. I doubt he looked onto X's life much longer. Not really. I know she fell out with some of her family because of her actions and they supported me afterwards. But for the most part her family was still supportive, though not happy with some of her decisions. Her parents also divorced after us because of infidelity on her mother's part, but we were unaware of that when everything started with us. Found out after the second issue with us, and they informed us of their circumstances and efforts to reconcile, forgive. He is happily married to a wonderful spouse now as well. She married her seaman, Coast Guard, and lives her life. If other things fell apart, I am unaware, as I didn't go out of my way to follow her life after I got mine in order. I did for the first year or so. It took 3 APs for Op to realize his wife doesn't care for his feelings, and you expect karma. True, I tried as much as I could to save the marriage and tried to help through 2 times of infidelity. I caught her when she first did it with both people and felt I could bring her around. Very naive of me back then. Also, we were dealing with the loss of our son and I took that into account. When she started talking to the third, I knew I was done, though my heart didn't follow as quickly. Where's your ex now? Just curious. Honestly, I could ask my wife, as she has checked up on my ex more recently than I have, but all I know is she moved a while ago. I really don't wish to research her, as I would rather spend the time with my twin boys. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.